Are you out of your mind? What about this hospital bill? Get over here and pay it now. My former mother-in-law's shrill voice screeched through the phone, so loud I thought my eardrum would split. I took a leisurely sip of my coffee and smiled to myself. It was exactly 3 days after we'd signed the divorce papers at the courthouse. This was the same woman who had pushed for the divorce, telling me not to stand in the way of her brilliant son's future. Now, hearing her demand money so brazenly, I simply chuckled and asked, "I'm sorry. Who is this? Ask your precious son for the money." The story of how I brought my condescending mother-in-law to her knees is a wild one. Let's start at the beginning. Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm 34 years old. The story I'm about to tell you is a record of a foolish and difficult time in my life. A time when, in an attempt to avoid one trap, I walked straight into a deeper, darker one. Some people say love is everything. But for me, love had always been an object of intense scrutiny, something to fear. To understand why I became so guarded, I have to go back to a memory from long ago. I can still see it, the mountain of potatoes, hundreds of pounds of them, piled up in our backyard during one particularly bitter winter. In my childhood memories, my mother was always crying, usually hidden away in a corner of the kitchen or by the shed. But that day was different. A call had come. My grandfather, her father, was critically ill. My mother, her face pale with shock, tried to run out the door, not even taking the time to put her shoes on properly. But my grandmother, a formidable wall of a woman, blocked her path. Instead of showing any concern, she gestured to the pile of potatoes. "If these freeze over, are you going to take responsibility?" she snarled. My mother wept, begging to be allowed to go just this once. But it was no use. My grandmother clicked her tongue, accusing my mom of using her family as an excuse to shirk her duties before a major holiday. She forced a pair of rubber gloves into my mother's hands and made her start peeling the potatoes for the massive Thanksgiving feast she was expected to prepare. Even as a child, I could see my mother's back, so frail it looked like it might snap. I tried to help, my small hands carrying baskets of peelings away. But it was a hopeless task. My mother stood before a massive tub of cold water, tears streaming down her face as she worked, and it seemed to me that it wasn't the potatoes being stripped bare, but my mother's very soul. It was late into the night before she was finally able to leave for the hospital. The moment we stepped into the hallway, the sound of weeping met us, and my mother collapsed right there. My grandfather had already passed away. Watching my mother sob uncontrollably at the funeral, I made a vow. The crimson cranberry sauce she'd been forced to make looked like her tears of blood, and on that day, I etched a promise into my bones. I would never, ever live like my mother. I would never sacrifice my life to an indifferent husband and a cruel mother-in-law. That vow became my guiding principle as I grew up, started dating, and eventually considered marriage. More than a man's career or his looks, I prioritized his family's dynamic and his mother's character. The man who finally caught my eye was Kevin. He was a student, with no money to his name, studying for the notoriously difficult Foreign Service Officer test. He had no fancy job or impressive background, but that's what I liked about him. I figured that with nothing to his name, there would be no family fortune to inherit and no arrogant, wealthy in-laws to look down on me. He was always in worn-out sweatpants and thick-rimmed glasses, shuttling back and forth to the library. But to me, he was the kindest, most devoted man in the world. On nights when I worked late, he would wait for me at the bus stop for an hour. Sometimes two. He'd take my frozen hands, put them in his pockets to warm them, and give me the warmest smile. But the decisive reason I chose to marry him was his mother, Linda. The first time I went to their home for dinner, I felt a strange sense of relief. The small apartment was impeccably clean, and the simple, home-cooked meal was comforting. Linda grasped my hand tightly, her eyes welling up. "I've always wanted a daughter," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "To think a lovely, sweet girl like you would choose my humble son. It feels like a dream." Her warmth melted away all the walls I had built around my heart. She stroked the back of my hand, her eyes the kindest I had ever seen. As she handed me a piece of peeled apple, she said, "I don't think of this as gaining a daughter-in-law, but gaining a daughter. We may not have much, but we're rich in love for one another. If you join our family, I promise I'll treat you like my own." In that moment, I felt like she was healing the deep sorrow I had felt for my own mother at my grandfather's funeral. I almost burst into tears. My friends tried to warn me. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to support a guy through something like that?" they'd say. "You'll be paying for everything. It's a thankless path." But I wouldn't listen. Money wasn't the point, I thought. I could earn money. True happiness was living a life of mutual respect, free from the stress of horrible in-laws. I had no idea what kind of venom was hidden behind Linda's gentle smile. I had, of my own free will, walked straight into the lion's den. Of course, I paid for the wedding with my own savings. The security deposit for our first apartment came from my account as well. Kevin was apologetic, swearing he would pass his exam and give me the world. To ensure he could focus solely on his studies, I took care of everything: the housework, the bills, all of it. Our newlywed life was less about romance and more an investment in our future. I lived each day with fierce determination. After our wedding and a short honeymoon, Linda greeted us with the same kind face. I felt a surge of pride, convinced I had made the right choice. But it didn't take long for that happy illusion to shatter. The mask came off in an instant. The weekend after we paid our respects to my own parents, we visited my in-laws again. As she served dinner, Linda began to subtly reveal her true colors. At first, it sounded like a simple, considerate request. I didn't catch the underlying intention and just smiled and nodded. As I was clearing the table, she watched me for a moment before saying casually, "You know, Kevin will be at the library all weekend studying. You must get so bored and lonely at home by yourself. Why don't you come over here and keep me company? We can cook a little something together." I thought she was being thoughtful, so I agreed. But what began the following weekend was not companionship. It was grueling, unpaid labor. After a long week at my demanding job, my precious weekend mornings were shattered by Linda's wake-up calls. I dragged my exhausted body to her apartment, and the moment I walked in, she tossed an apron at me. "The stuff in the fridge is about to go bad," she commanded. "Chop it all up. Make some casseroles, some chili for the week." Kevin would disappear into a back room, claiming he needed to study, and shut the door. The living room would fill with the sound of the TV and Linda's constant nagging. As I stood at the sink, facing a mountain of vegetables to chop, I felt a chill run down my spine. The image of my own mother, years ago, flashed before my eyes. I shook my head, trying to deny it. "This isn't servitude," I told myself. "This is helping my new family. She's getting older, so I'm just giving her a hand." I rationalized it, brainwashed myself into believing it. If I admitted I was struggling, it would feel like my vow to not be like my mother was failing, that my marriage was a mistake. So, out of sheer stubbornness, I worked even harder, chopping faster, scrubbing more vigorously. By the time I drove home in the evening, completely drained, Kevin would smile brightly from the passenger seat, oblivious. "Wow, that casserole was delicious," he'd say, without a hint of guilt. A surge of anger would rise in my throat, but I'd swallow it down. "He's just stressed with his studies," I'd reason. "He doesn't have the bandwidth to worry about me right now. Once he passes, he'll make it all up to me." But that was just my naive fantasy. As time went on, Linda's demands grew bolder and more shameless. It went beyond physical labor. Soon, she started making blatant attempts to get into my wallet. At first, it was small things she'd complain about: an unexpected medical copay or a broken appliance. Feeling it was my duty as a daughter-in-law, I'd give her some cash in an envelope. She would take the money not with a thank you, but with an air of entitlement, as if it were her due. The next month, she'd call with a new reason. My salary, which was meant for our future, was disappearing into the black hole of Linda's expenses. When I tried to talk to Kevin about it, he'd just lecture me. "Mom sacrificed everything to raise me. It's our job to be good to her." Juggling my job, my servitude to my in-laws, and propping up my clueless husband, my body and soul were slowly wasting away. But I endured. I kept pushing through. And then, after 2 long years of this ordeal, it happened. I saw the words "final selection" in bold letters on Kevin's phone screen. My heart pounded in my chest, but the first thing that escaped my lips wasn't a cheer, but a long, deep sigh. The suffocating tunnel I had been in for 2 years, burning my youth and my bank account as fuel, was finally over. I felt a wave of relief. With a trembling hand, I put my arm around his shoulder. "You did it," I whispered. "I knew you would." But my quiet moment was shattered by Linda's piercing shriek. "Oh, my baby." My prayers were answered. The Lord heard my prayers. My years of sleepless nights, the meals I cooked before dawn, the tutoring fees paid with my hard-earned money, all of it vanished. All the credit went to her prayers. But it was a day for celebration, so I forced a smile and let it go. The house was in a festive mood. Linda was on the phone, shouting the news to the entire world, her voice already dripping with arrogance. To keep up the celebratory atmosphere, I rushed to the supermarket and bought everything Kevin loved: prime rib, expensive cheeses, exotic fruits. I returned with my arms full of grocery bags, expecting Kevin to rush to the door to help me. Instead, he was lounging on the sofa, legs crossed, flipping through TV channels. He glanced at me, then gestured with his chin toward the kitchen. "You're back," he said flatly. "Mom's hungry. Get dinner started. I hope you're not making anything boring on a day like today." His cold, dismissive tone sent a chill through me, but I swallowed my feelings and went to the kitchen to put on an apron. Laughter echoed from the living room as I chopped and sautéed, feeling like nothing more than a hired cook in my own home. In that moment, the grim reality hit me. For 2 years, I hadn't been supporting a partner, but a king. At the dinner table, Kevin picked up his fork and made a strange announcement. "Mom, once I start my training in D.C., I'll have a lot of events with my colleagues. I'm going to need a whole new wardrobe, suits, shoes, the works. I'll be a diplomat for the State Department. I can't look cheap." Linda, as if on cue, glanced at me and chimed in. "Of course. You're not just anybody now. You're a representative of our country. Maintaining your image is everything." She then turned to me. "You heard him, Sarah. Take him to Nordstrom tomorrow. Get him the best of everything, from head to toe." The food in my mouth turned to sand. It wasn't just the demand for more money before we'd even had a chance to celebrate that stunned me. It was Kevin's attitude. He knew better than anyone how I had sacrificed, forgoing new clothes and makeup for myself for 2 years to support him. But instead of gratitude, he looked at me with the entitled glare of a creditor calling in a debt. "Why aren't you saying anything? Your savings bond just matured, didn't it? You can't spare that as a graduation gift." My voice trembled as I asked. "He just got the offer. Once he gets his first paycheck, couldn't we buy them then?" Kevin let out a cold, cynical laugh. "Are you kidding? The hierarchy in the government is incredibly strict. If you look weak from the start, you'll be walked all over forever. Are you trying to support my career or sabotage it?" Sabotage it. The word stabbed me in the heart. My years of blood, sweat, and tears were being dismissed as an obstacle. Linda added her 2 cents, clicking her tongue. "TSK. TSK. Such a small-minded woman. My son is a diplomat now. A diplomat. He's in a different league from you now. When he succeeds, you get to be called Mrs. Ambassador, and you're crying over a few $1,000s? That's when I finally understood. They had never once considered me family. I was just a disposable tool, a stepping stone for her son's career." The phrase "different league" echoed in my head. I looked at the man across from me and couldn't believe he was the same person who, 2 years ago, held my hand outside the library and swore he'd repay my kindness for the rest of his life. One acceptance letter had turned him into this cruel, unrecognizable stranger. Later, as I was serving dessert, Kevin lay sprawled on the couch, studying my face with a frown. "You know, you've really let yourself go lately," he said. "Your skin looks tired, your clothes are so drab. It would be a little embarrassing to take you to embassy parties or introduce you to my colleagues." Embarrassed? My skin was tired because I was working day and night to support him. My clothes were drab because I hadn't bought a single new thing for myself. I wanted to scream, "Do you have any idea what I've been through to put you through this?" But with Linda watching me with her hawk-like eyes, I bit my lip and said nothing. I knew if I got angry, they would just paint me as a jealous, unsupportive wife. Kevin took my silence as agreement and started humming, pulling out his phone. He began texting someone, probably a group chat with his new colleagues, and giggled to himself. The sound of his carefree laughter grated on my nerves. Unable to bear it, I escaped to the kitchen, pretending to do the dishes. But even over the sound of the running water, I could clearly hear their conversation. "Mom, you should see some of the women in my program. They're so chic and pretty. It's a different world." "Well, of course, dear. They all come from educated, wealthy families. My son is so handsome, he'll fit right in." I squeezed the sponge so hard it tore, forcing back tears. I had fought so hard, so desperately, because I didn't want to admit my marriage was a failure, because I wanted to prove my choice wasn't a mistake. But the result was this devastating betrayal. The moment Kevin got his wings, he started treating me like an old shoe. His mother now saw me as a burden holding her son back. That night, I lay in bed with my back to him, pretending to be asleep. The sound of his steady breathing next to me felt grotesque, sending shivers down my spine. He was probably dreaming of his bright new future, a slight smile on his face. While I lay awake, staring into the darkness, feeling like I was on the edge of a cliff. How could I possibly spend the rest of my life with these people who had already started treating me like I was invisible? The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, Kevin didn't even glance at me. Lying in bed, scrolling through his phone, he said dismissively, "Mom's throwing a big party tonight for all the relatives to celebrate. You need to leave work on time, get home, and get all the food ready. My aunts and uncles are coming, so don't mess it up. I have a major presentation at work today. I might be late. Is anything more important than my celebration party? Don't make excuses. Be there on time. Don't disappoint Mom." He slammed the bedroom door and left. I stared at the door and let out a hollow laugh. Terrified of the fallout if I didn't show up, I once again dragged my heavy feet toward what I knew would be another ordeal. But I had no idea that a pivotal event was waiting for me at that party, an event that would completely upend my life. It wasn't just about my pride being hurt or my body being tired. A storm was coming, one that would spin the compass of my destiny in a completely new direction. The celebration party was chaos. The sea of shoes at the entrance made me sigh, but I steeled myself for battle, tossed my purse in a corner, and headed straight for the kitchen. The small living room was packed with relatives, and in the center of it all sat Kevin, preening like a triumphant general. People were showering him with praise, a diamond in the rough. The pride of the family, and Linda soaked it all up, her face flushed with pride. I was in the steamy kitchen, sweating as I fried appetizers and served soup, but not a single person said, "You're working so hard," or offered me a glass of water. To them, I was just part of the background, an invisible servant keeping the party running. As the night wore on, Linda, fueled by wine and excitement, grew louder. "Everyone, do you know what kind of son my Kevin is? The precious son I raised all by myself, working in diners? Now he's a diplomat. Our family has finally made it." She staggered to her feet to propose a toast, but perhaps she was too overcome. Suddenly, her face turned a ghastly shade of gray. "Oh, my head," she gasped, clutching the back of her neck, and collapsed. The party instantly descended into chaos. I dropped what I was doing, dialed 911, and rushed to her side, massaging her trembling hands and feet until the paramedics arrived. At the ER, while Kevin stood numbly against a wall, I was tormented by a ridiculous guilt, wondering if my secret resentment toward her had somehow caused this. Fortunately, the doctor explained it was a transient ischemic attack, a mini-stroke, and she would be fine with rest. But in that moment, my good daughter-in-law complex kicked into high gear. I couldn't bear the thought of putting the woman who collapsed from the joy of her son's success in a standard room. More accurately, I was terrified of being branded a terrible, uncaring wife. Without even consulting Kevin, I ran to the admissions office. "My mother-in-law," I said, my voice shaking. "I want her to be as comfortable as possible. Please, put her in a private suite, the best one you have. I'll cover the cost." I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought it would make them see my sincerity and be grateful. When Linda woke up in the luxurious private suite, her eyes went wide. She marveled at the panoramic city view, the plush sofa, the personal refrigerator. Forgetting she was even sick, she beamed. "Wow, I've never been treated like this in my life. See? As soon as my son makes it big, the daughter-in-law knows her place. A diplomat's mother deserves this kind of treatment." The fact that I had arranged it out of concern for her was completely erased. It was all because of her son's glory. I was speechless, but I didn't want to argue with someone who was ill, so I just forced a smile. And so, my new hell began. The chapter of supporting a student was over, replaced by the chapter of being a full-time caregiver. Kevin, using networking events and training seminars as excuses, never once set foot in the hospital. The entire burden fell on me. I made special meals, peeled fruit, and catered to her every whim. At night, I slept on a tiny cot, even helping her with the bedpan. I was physically and emotionally exhausted, but I kept going, hoping Kevin would at least call and say, "You're the only one I can count on. I'll make this up to you." But the only calls I got from him were complaints. "Honey, did you not iron my shirts? I have an important dinner tomorrow and nothing to wear. What are you doing at the hospital all day that you can't even take care of your husband's clothes?" While my hands were raw from caring for his mother, he was worried about his damn shirts. Linda, meanwhile, was thriving in the comfort of her private suite and showed no inclination of wanting to leave. She treated my service as her God-given right. "Hey, why are the nurses so slow? And make me that seafood porridge tomorrow. That's the one thing you're actually good at." Like a robot, I'd reply, "Yes, of course," and rush out to buy ingredients. After a week of this, I had lost nearly 10 pounds from exhaustion. A critical project meeting came up at work, one I absolutely couldn't miss. I cautiously approached Linda. "I'm so sorry, but I have a really important meeting at work tomorrow, so I won't be able to come. Maybe we could hire a nurse for just one day, or you could ask Kevin to come." Before I could even finish, her eyes narrowed. "What? A nurse? Your husband? How dare you suggest a man of his stature should be cleaning up after me? And you want me to let a complete stranger touch me? You're just using work as an excuse to get out of your duties, aren't you?" "No, it's a really important meeting." "Quiet. How much do you even earn? Stop trying to sabotage my son's career and act right. It's a daughter-in-law's duty to care for her sick mother-in-law. How dare you talk back to me?" Her tirade silenced me. In the end, I had to use my vacation days to stay at the hospital, and my career began to suffer. No matter how much I sacrificed, I never received a kind word, only contempt and dismissal. The hospital bill for the private suite was growing astronomically, but neither Kevin nor Linda ever mentioned it. They acted as if it was a given that I would pay. Then, one day, I stepped out to check on the interim bill. As I walked back down the hall, I heard Linda's voice through the partially open door. She sounded unusually loud and cheerful. What she said made me freeze in my tracks. "Oh, it's heaven here. Absolute heaven. The daughter-in-law spoons food into my mouth, peels my fruit. I'm living like a queen. And it's all because you're a diplomat now, isn't it? Before, she would have been so stubborn. But now that she's intimidated by your status, look at her, groveling. It's so satisfying to watch." I couldn't believe my ears. My sincere, devoted caregiving was, in their eyes, just an act of submission born of his new status. I was still reeling from the shock when I heard Kevin's voice through the speakerphone. "See, Mom? I told you. I've got her under my thumb. Where else is she going to find a husband in the State Department? Enjoy it. Don't worry about the bill. Oh, you're such a good son. But you know, she was whining about asking you to come for one day because of work. I think I need to tighten the leash a bit more. When I get out of here, I'll really put her in her place." Their cackling laughter echoed down the hallway. I wanted to collapse, the crumpled receipt in my hand. It was a despair beyond betrayal. I had been a fool, and they had been systematically exploiting me. Tears welled in my eyes, but I clenched my jaw and forced them back. I knew if I stormed in there, they'd just twist it and make me the villain. Composing myself, I walked in. Linda immediately started groaning, resuming her act. "Oh, Sarah, give me some water. I'm so thirsty." I handed her the glass, a fire of rage burning inside me. This can't go on, I thought. I will not be their fool any longer. But it wasn't the right time. I wanted to see just how far they would push me. A few days later, a day came when I genuinely couldn't get out of work. I had to endure Linda's barrage of insults before leaving for the office. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Linda's number, but the voice on the other end was a woman I didn't know. A voice filled with a strange, ominous energy. It was the beginning of the storm that would change everything. "Hello? Sarah?" A woman's voice rasped. Before I could ask who it was, she began speaking as if she could see right through me. It turned out to be Madame Serafina, a psychic Linda was always raving about. She had come to visit Linda and had offered to do a reading for me over the phone. But what came out of her mouth wasn't a blessing. It was a curse. "Oh, my. This daughter-in-law is all wrong." Just from her voice, I can tell her energy is completely blocked. She is suffocating her husband's potential. Without her, your son wouldn't just be a diplomat. He'd be on track to become Secretary of State. But she's holding him back. My mind went blank. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but Linda's reaction, which I could hear in the background, was even more absurd. Known for her superstitious nature, she was gasping in agreement. "Oh, madam, is it true? I always knew he was brilliant, but he struggled for 2 years to pass that test. Was it all her fault?" "Absolutely. This woman's aura is cursed. It's a curse that will devour her husband's success. If you don't get rid of her now, your son will be stuck in a low-level position for his entire career. Or worse, his life itself could be cut short." I almost laughed out loud. After 2 years of me working myself to the bone to support him, they were calling me a curse. But for Linda, those words were gospel. The moment the psychic finished, Linda snatched the phone. "Did you hear that? Pack your bags and get out. I will not let you ruin my son's future. I want a divorce, now." I was so stunned I couldn't speak. Just yesterday, she was lazing in a private suite, calling it heaven, and now, based on the word of a psychic, she was throwing me out? Linda, what are you talking about? I stammered. A divorce because of a psychic? Psychic? Madame Serafina has never been wrong. My son passed his test because of a good luck charm she made for him. What have you ever done? Now, get away from my son. The line went dead. For a moment, I just stood there, holding the phone, a mix of rage and disbelief washing over me. But I held on to one last shred of hope. Kevin would be different. He was an educated man. He would be rational. I called him immediately to tell him what was happening. But his voice, when he answered, was disturbingly calm. Cold, even. As I explained the situation, he just sighed. You know, Sarah, he said, I don't think Mom is entirely wrong. What? What are you saying? You believe that nonsense? It's not about the psychic. Honestly, since I passed, I've been thinking, maybe we aren't a good match. You're so pragmatic. So calculating. For a man in my position, I need a wife who is more supportive. Someone who builds me up. You're always trying to control me. Calculating? After I'd spent every penny of my salary on him for 2 years, it was obvious this was just an excuse. He wanted out, and the psychic was his convenient scapegoat. Now that he had his prestigious title, I had become an inconvenience. And let's be honest, he continued, I'm in the State Department now. The wives of my colleagues, they're from influential, powerful families. Your family isn't poor, but they can't help my career. I want to climb higher, and I'm starting to think you might be a liability. There it was. The truth. It was never about love or partnership. He just needed a tool to advance his career. All my sacrifices were now worthless garbage in the face of his ambition. The betrayal was so profound I couldn't speak, but he kept twisting the knife. So let's just use this as an excuse and make it a clean break. I know you sacrificed a lot for me, so I'll make sure you get a fair settlement. Of course. I don't have any money right now, so I'll have to pay you back later. A settlement on credit. He was pathetic to the very end. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. In that instant, the last shred of affection I had for him crumbled to dust. This man was beyond saving. The kind, simple man I thought I knew was dead, or perhaps he had never existed at all. I was no longer angry. I was calm. Fine, I thought. You want me gone? I'll go. But you will have to deal with the consequences. A cold smile touched my lips. Okay, I said, my voice steady. If that's what you and your mother want, I'll step aside. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of a great diplomat's career. My calm acceptance seemed to throw him off. He had expected tears, begging. Wait, really? You're not going to regret this. You can't come back later. Oh, you're the one who's going to have regrets, I said. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. After hanging up, I stared out the window, feeling a vast emptiness where my love for him used to be. But I didn't cry. More than sadness, I felt a sense of liberation, of relief. I was finally free from these toxic people. But I wasn't going to just walk away. They were going to pay for the humiliation and pain they caused me. Linda was probably gloating in her hospital bed, and Kevin was likely popping champagne to celebrate his newfound freedom. There was just one thing they had forgotten. Who was paying for that luxurious hospital suite? I calmly opened my wallet and looked at the interim bill from the hospital's business office. The final bill, due upon discharge, was going to be enormous. My name and number were listed as the responsible party. I imagined taking a red pen, crossing out my information, and writing Kevin's in its place. And then I made my decision. Tomorrow, I would go to the courthouse. The moment we signed those papers would be the beginning of my revenge. I would give them the divorce they so desperately wanted, but I would wrap it around a bomb they would never see coming. I didn't sleep a wink that night, but I wasn't tired. My mind was sharp, my body buzzing with energy. The next morning, I chose my most professional, stylish outfit and took extra care with my makeup. The woman in the mirror was no longer a downtrodden wife, but a confident career woman on the verge of a new life. On the way to the courthouse, I sent Kevin a text. Family court, 2 p.m., I'll have the papers. I knew he'd be there, feigning reluctance for his mother's sake, but secretly overjoyed. The thought of the look on his face made me smirk. This wasn't an end. It was a new beginning. I walked up the courthouse steps, imagining his face when he signed, and the chaos that would erupt at the hospital in just a few days. He arrived, looking as light on his feet as if he were dancing. There was no apology or sadness in his eyes. only the relief of someone finally finishing a tedious chore. You got the papers? Let's get this over with. I have a networking thing with my cohort later. I handed him the envelope without a word. He barely glanced at the documents before scribbling his signature, with no hesitation at all. I took a deep breath and signed my name. As the notary stamped the documents, a strange sense of exhilaration washed over me. I was free. As we walked out, he said, without looking at me, "Well, thanks for everything. I'll get you that settlement money eventually. I'll explain things to Mom. Hope you find someone nice." The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. "You too," I said flatly. "I hope you find a woman who is in your league and live happily ever after." He missed the sarcasm entirely, grinned, and hailed a cab without a backward glance. As the taxi pulled away, I whispered, "Enjoy your laugh now. Let's see if you're still laughing in 3 days." Back at our apartment, I packed my things. It didn't take long. In 2 years of marriage, I had bought almost nothing for myself. A few outfits, some makeup, and my books. Instead of crying, I found myself humming. I didn't want to leave a single trace of myself behind, so I even packed my toothbrush. My last act was a phone call to the hospital's billing department. "Hello, this is regarding the patient in the deluxe suite, Linda Miller. I need to change the primary contact information. A family emergency has come up." I gave them Kevin's name and number. After the clerk confirmed the change, I hung up. All the pieces were in place. My mother was shocked to see me at her door with a suitcase. But after I explained everything, she held me and wept. "My poor girl. You did the right thing. Never look back." In the safety of her arms, I finally let my own tears fall, not of sorrow, but of relief. 3 peaceful days passed. I kept my phone on, curious to see when the call would come. But for 3 days, there was nothing. Not a single call or text. I realized Linda was probably thinking, she's giving me the silent treatment because I demanded a divorce. She'll come crawling back in a few days, begging for forgiveness." She was probably bragging to the nurses about her diplomat son, confident he would handle everything. Kevin was likely too busy celebrating his freedom to give his mother or her hospital bill a second thought. They were living in a fool's paradise, wasting their precious time. And then, on the morning of the 3rd day, Linda's scheduled discharge day began. Just after 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. The caller ID read Linda. I let it ring, savoring the moment. Just before it went to voicemail, I answered, my voice calm and professional. "Hello? Where are you? Don't you know I'm being discharged today? You need to come pack my things and handle the paperwork." "What are you doing?" Ignoring me. She clearly had no idea. A smirk played on my lips as I replied in my most polite, yet chillingly detached, customer service voice. "I'm sorry. You must have the wrong number. Who is this?" There was a stunned silence, then a shriek. "What do you mean? Who is this?" "It's your mother-in-law. Are you insane?" "Oh, my ex-husband's mother," I said sweetly. "We signed the divorce papers 3 days ago. I guess he forgot to tell you." "What? Divorce?" I could hear her sharp intake of breath. "You really did it?" But a person has a sense of duty. You can't just abandon me at the hospital." "Please don't misunderstand," I said, my voice like ice. "You're the one who demanded a divorce. I granted your wish so I wouldn't block your son's bright future. You should be thanking me. And since we're no longer related, I have no obligation to you or your hospital bills." "You wicked girl." "Then the bill." "What about the bill?" There it was, the real concern. "The bill?" I said. "Why, that's for your brilliant son, Kevin Miller, the diplomat, to handle. Why would I pay the hospital bill for a stranger's mother?" I had all the contact information updated to his name. "I'm sure they'll be in touch." "What? What did you?" I hung up on her scream and immediately blocked her number. The satisfaction was electric, but I knew it wasn't over. The next call would be from him. Sure enough, less than a minute later, Kevin appeared on my screen. I took another sip of coffee before answering. "Hello? Sarah, where are you? What did you do to my mom?" "The hospital won't let her leave. They're saying the bill hasn't been paid." His voice was a panicked mess. "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I just told the truth. We're divorced. I'm not her family anymore. As her son, the bill is your responsibility." "Are you crazy? Do you know how much a private suite costs? It's over $30,000. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money? You were supposed to pay for it." "Was I? And who, exactly, is going to pay me the settlement you promised me on credit?" The one you're so proud of? You're a big shot diplomat now. Figure it out. I hung up on his sputtering, desperate pleas and blocked his number two. The ball was now in their court. I pictured them, trapped and panicking under the weight of a massive bill they couldn't pay. The hospital staff hounding them. Linda's humiliation. Kevin's utter despair. It was the price they had to pay for their cruelty. The 3 days of silence were over. Their personal hell was just beginning. I looked out the window and whispered, "Welcome to the show." It's just getting started. After I blocked their numbers, my phone fell silent. But I could imagine the frenzy on the other end. Kevin would be scrambling, desperate to reach me. A few hours later, a call came from my best friend. "Sarah, your ex-husband just called me, practically in tears, begging for your new number. What is going on?" He was babbling about a hospital bill and his mom being held hostage or something. I snorted. "Don't worry about it. Let's just say I won the lottery. The divorce lottery. He's not my problem anymore." Soon, calls started coming from unknown numbers. Pay phones, blocked IDs. He was clearly desperate. I decided to answer one, just to hear the sweet music of his desperation one last time. "Hello? Sarah, it's me, Kevin. Please don't hang up." His voice was no longer just panicked. It was pathetic. "I'm sorry. Who is this? I don't have a husband. Please, stop joking around. I'm serious. The hospital bill is huge. My credit cards are maxed out, and I can't get a loan. Could you please, just please, come and pay it for now? I swear I'll pay you back when I get my first paycheck." The nerve of this man. "You still don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice dripping with scorn. "We are strangers. Why would I pay your mother's bills? And you'll pay me back? Don't you think I know you're on the verge of financial ruin? Dream on." "But we had something. I know my mom was harsh, but you can't just push us off a cliff like this. She's in shock. She might have another stroke." "Something? You sold that something for the advice of a cheap psychic. And whether your mother has a stroke or not is no longer my concern. You're the devoted son, remember? This is your chance to be a hero. Stop whining. You're really going to do this? I'll tell everyone in town what you did. I'll ruin you. I'll paint you as a monster." He was resorting to threats. How low could he go? "Go ahead," I said, my voice deadly calm. "And I'll put up posters all over your new office building. Promising young diplomat abandons wife on psychic's advice. Begs ex for money to bail mom out of hospital." How do you think the State Department's Ethics Committee will feel about that? Want to find out? He choked, speechless. "Sarah, please. I was wrong. Just help me this one time. I'll be indebted to you for life." "Indebted? I don't want to leech like you attached to my life. Don't ever contact me again. One more call, and I'm filing a restraining order." I hung up and blocked the number. The final nail was in the coffin. He had no options. No bank would lend him money. His credit was shot, and he was too proud to ask his friends for such a large amount. Then I remembered something he'd said once about shady lenders who give quick cash to people with government job offers. I knew, with absolute certainty, what he would do. He would go to a loan shark. That evening, I got a short text from another unknown number. Solved it. I paid the damn bill. Hope I never see you again. He had taken the bait. That night, I raised a glass of wine with my family, a genuine smile on my face for the first time in years. A month later, the gossip I heard confirmed everything. The owner of my mom's hair salon asked her, "Hey, what's going on with your former in-laws? I heard loan sharks have been showing up at their place. Sarah is so lucky she got out of there." That Linda was going around town bad-mouthing Sarah. And then a few nights ago, she got into a screaming match with some men in her apartment and was taken away in an ambulance again. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. He'd paid the bill with a high-interest loan he couldn't possibly afford to repay. Linda, already stressed, had probably picked a fight with the debt collectors and collapsed again. The luxury she enjoyed in the VIP suite had turned into a hell of threatening phone calls. I looked at my mom and said, "I told you, Mom. I told you I wouldn't live like you. I'm finally free." Their downfall was just beginning, and I was perfectly positioned to watch the whole thing unfold from a comfortable distance. A few weeks after I heard that loan sharks had shown up at Kevin's federal office building, I was enjoying a peaceful weekend at home. Suddenly, the doorbell began ringing frantically, accompanied by someone pounding on the door with their fists. My mom went to check the video intercom, and her face went pale. Behind her, I saw them on the screen. Kevin, his hair a mess, looking like he hadn't showered in days. And Linda, still in what looked like pajama pants under a threadbare cardigan. They looked like cornered animals, their eyes wild with desperation. My father answered the intercom. "Who is it? What do you want?" "Dad? It's me. Please, just open the door. Let me talk to her." Kevin's voice pleaded through the speaker. My father told them to leave, or he'd call the police. But they only grew more frantic, with Linda screaming my name, wailing about how I could do this to her. To avoid a scene, my dad opened the door. They stumbled in, a pathetic sight. Kevin fell to his knees, grabbing the hem of my pants. "Sarah, please, save me. The loan sharks came to my office. I'm about to be fired. Just help me this one time, and I'll be your slave for life." I kicked his hand away in disgust. "Who are you? We're divorced, and I have no need for a slave like you." Linda shrieked. "How can you be so heartless?" I folded my arms. "Heartless? You're the one who threw away our relationship because of a psychic. Remember? And now you have the nerve to come to my parents' house and cause a scene? Get out!" She started screaming about taking me to court, about how I'd pay for abandoning her. The absurdity of it was almost funny. "Court?" I laughed. "With what money?" "The money you're using to pay off loan sharks. And, for the record, your son is the one who abandoned his financial responsibilities. I have 2 years of bank statements to prove I paid for everything. If we go to court, you'll be the one paying me." My father, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "You made my daughter's life a living hell, and now you dare to show up here begging for money? I will not tolerate this. Get out of my house now." He pulled out his phone. "One more second, and I'm calling the police for trespassing and harassment. And then, I'm calling the Inspector General's office at the State Department. I imagine they'd be very interested to hear about a probationary employee who is deep in debt to loan sharks and is harassing his ex-wife's family." The threat of involving his work was a death sentence. Kevin went white, begging my father not to. "If I get fired, my life is over." "Your life?" My father thundered. "What about the 2 years you stole from my daughter's life? Get out." Just then, we heard police sirens. My mother had quietly called them from the other room. As 2 officers entered, Kevin and Linda were dragged out, kicking and screaming. "Sarah, give me some money. Just $1,000. We're going to die." As they were forced into the back of the police car, Kevin's eyes met mine. They were filled with a pathetic mix of hatred and despair. I slammed the door shut, the click of the lock sounding like the final chapter of a terrible book closing for good. That night was the definitive end. The storm had passed, and for the first time, my head was clear. The next day, I walked into my father's office. His company was a successful food distribution business. "Dad," I said, "I want to really learn the business. From the ground up, I want to earn my place." He smiled. "That's my girl. The fire is back in your eyes." And so my real life began. I worked harder than anyone, arriving early, staying late. All the skills I'd learned from navigating my horrible marriage, reading people, negotiating with my impossible mother-in-law, turned out to be incredible assets in the business world. I landed difficult clients, solved complex problems, and fell in love with my work. When a new product line I developed became a massive success, I was no longer known as the boss's daughter, but as Sarah, the brilliant team lead. The feeling was intoxicating, erasing years of being taken for granted. As I thrived, whispers of Kevin and Linda's fate reached me. Kevin was, indeed, fired for conduct unbecoming a federal employee. The loan sharks had made sure of that. He disappeared, and the rumor was he was now a day laborer on some construction site far away. The man who once called me out of his league now living at the very bottom. Linda's end was even more tragic. Her health failed completely, but with her son destitute, she couldn't afford proper medical care. She was confined to a tiny, run-down apartment, said to spend her days weeping and mumbling. I was a fool. I threw away a diamond. One evening, after a business dinner at a fancy restaurant, I saw a man in a shabby jacket handing out flyers. It was him. He was avoiding eye contact with the passers-by who ignored him. Then, he looked up and saw me, dressed in a designer suit, waiting for the valet to bring my luxury sedan. He froze, his eyes wide with shock and shame. For a moment, I just stared. The man who had once been my whole world. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger. I got in my car and drove away, not even glancing in the rearview mirror. A few days later, a letter with messy handwriting arrived at my office. It was from Linda, a desperate, rambling plea for forgiveness. for money, for me to take Kevin back. I laughed. Some people never change. I tore the letter up and threw it in the trash. That night, I stood by my office window, looking out at the glittering city lights, a glass of wine in my hand. The reflection in the glass was of a strong, happy, successful woman. I had finally kept the promise that little girl made at her grandfather's funeral. They say, after the junker car is gone, a Benz comes along. I'd like to amend that. You have to throw out the junker so you can become the Benz. I was no longer someone's wife or daughter-in-law. I was the one in the driver's seat of my own life, and the road ahead was wide open.